Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our weekly Learn in Your Lunchtime webinar. We go live here every Friday at 12 o'clock on the Student Success Coach community YouTube channel. So a very warm welcome to you. If you are joining us for the first time, please do say hi and tell us where you are based, your university, or where you're watching us from today. We're going to be getting into writing skills today. So also pop your questions in there about writing, and I'll be sure to deal with all of them. We'll also be talking about a couple of courses that you can take. So there's really going to be a lot of fantastic value that you can take advantage of this afternoon. And as always, just a reminder, there is the Student Success Coach Facebook group, the Student Success Coach website. There's lots of free resources available for you to take full advantage of. And really, we're geared towards helping you be successful as a student, and not only during your studies, but also on into the workplace. By helping you get the job that you want, get your CV ready, get through interviews and all other aspects of workplace readiness. So we've had lots of great interviews with people like Tracy Ashington and others who have given us that perspective on how to position yourself for a graduate recruitment program, for example, and how to make sure that you get your CV right. We've even got courses that will give you feedback on your CV where you submit that as an assignment. So really do take advantage of all of these resources. If it's your first year of study this year and you're just getting into the swing of things, it's February already, so I think most of the universities are back into term time. So Palesa, hi and welcome to you from the University of Pretoria, watching live from Springs, Kwatemba. Fantastic to have you. Really great. Glad that you could join us. I'm hoping Happiness joins us. She got a hold of me early this morning just to say that she was starting off her postgraduate degree this year, and what videos or resources could I recommend to her. And so we'll be doing writing, but then I'll also be talking about my Student Success Coach Masterclass, which is a quite comprehensive online course that gives you the 6 big things that you need to get right to be successful, particularly at a postgraduate level. So Happiness, please do let me know if you've joined us and say hi in the chat, and I'll be sure to point out when we're going to talk about the Student Success Coach Masterclass. Great. Lorato is here from University of Johannesburg, watching live from Polokwane in Limpopo. Very warm welcome to you, Lorato. Thank you very much for joining us. Really hope that you're going to learn something today and apply very practical writing tips. Writing is such an important topic. Greetings, Kgofatso, Solplaatje University in Kimberley. Fantastic. So we've got a good coverage of universities today. If you can't write, or if you struggle to write, or if you're not motivated to write, or if you're not writing well enough for your supervisors or your examiners or your readers in general, then it will be very difficult to really be successful. Writing is like a muscle. It's something that you have to train at. It's something that you have to practice, something that you have to be very good at. And what I'm going to take you through in today's webinar for about the next sort of half an hour, 40 minutes, was some material that I developed and presented in postgraduate writing workshops at Wits University for about 5 years. We went on to create a couple of courses out of that material. One is on edX, and the other one, obviously, my own course portfolio on Udemy, and I'll provide access to you all for that as well. So you can go in and get a lot more detail, because it's impossible to cover all of the principles and all of the techniques and practices in a short webinar like this. University of Venda, Romano, fantastic. I can't remember if we've had a University of Venda student. So very warm welcome. Hey, Cape Town, University of Western Cape, watching live from Cape Town. Hope it's good weather down there. I don't know if you guys are going to hit the beaches later, but a very warm welcome to you. Then we've got Shadrach from University of the Free State, watching live from Bloemfontein. I was down in Bloemfontein last weekend at Grey College, watching my son play a water polo tournament. So I was in your part of the woods last week. So very good to have you as well, Shadrach. Felisa from Gibbs, watching from East London. Fantastic. Felisa, great to have you join us as well. And University of Northwest. Gosh, I think we've had about 7 or 8 different universities coming through. And of course, Wits, Ayanda. Fantastic. I seem to recall that you've been with us a few times. So fantastic that you can join us. Really, 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 really pleased to see you guys coming online. And we're here every week, 12 o'clock. We'll try and get a notice out through the university mailing lists, but you can also just subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then you'll get notified there as well. So let me just put that information on there. I don't always send out a mailing, a notification on the mailing list. I did send one this morning. But it would be great if you want to get that as well delivered straight into your inbox from me. I've put 2 links there. One is to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then one is to subscribe to my mailing list. And those are really going to be 2 fantastic resources for you to take advantage of. And then I was thrilled to see during the week that in our Facebook group, somebody asked whether anybody had a spare computer monitor to loan them, because they were struggling to get their work done. They didn't have everything they needed. And I think somebody has been able to donate a computer monitor. So I never anticipated when we set up the Student Success Coach Facebook group that we'd be helping each other with things like that. But I'm thrilled that, there is access to a community. We all need as much help as we can get. We all have issues that we're struggling with. And if you could reach out to like-minded people that are willing to help you, in a safe place like the Student Success Coach Facebook group, then why wouldn't you use that fantastic resource? And all the people that I've interviewed in these webinars, are all linked to their resources from inside the Facebook group. So that is really the best place to find out all the information and get hold of all the people that we've interviewed. Because I can't answer all your questions. But we certainly have a very wide network in the Student Success Coach Facebook group, and we have a mentorship program. So I think we have 8 or 9 mentors that have made themselves available, sort of for informal check-ins. It's up to you guys to sort out how that works, but they have stepped up to say, I'm willing to be a mentor to somebody else that needs me. So get into the Student Success Coach Facebook group and take advantage of that. Johannes, good afternoon. Mechanical engineering, so that's the degree that I did. So hopefully you can hang with us for as long as possible, Johannes. And if you can't get all the resources, if I load them onto the chat, then do pop into the Facebook group and I'll make sure that they're all in there as well. Okay, I think we're going to get started now. Marcel Philander from University of Stellenbosch doing PGCE. Okay, fantastic. Postgraduate certificate of education, I think. So Marcel, very warm welcome to you. All right, guys, lovely to see you introducing all yourselves. Please, can we change gears now? And can you ask questions about writing? So let's get into writing. That's why you are here. And that's what we are going to be talking about. So the reality is, we go into university with these aspirations of getting a degree and studying in a field that we're passionate about. And that's absolutely fantastic. The reality hits when we realize just how dependent we are on our ability to get large-scale writing projects done. And the more you move from BSc to MSc to PhD, the more emphasis is placed on writing. And that is the primary form of how you are measured and how you're able to make a contribution to the industry, and is really the primary form of communication. And it's interesting because you go into the business world, and there's probably a little bit less emphasis placed on writing. Whereas in academia, we have this notion of needing to write unambiguously. So when you are writing about whatever topic, you have to write in a way that is absolutely crystal clear, and the reader can fully understand the argument that you're forming. And if you're going through a PhD level research methodology, there's a significant amount of complexity, not only in the topic that you're studying, but potentially also in the methodology that you're following. So all of these aspects combine to be, quite challenging on their own, but then to bring that all together, like you can see on the screen there, in this document, in this final report. You call it a thesis or a dissertation or even an assignment at a BSc master's level, even writing projects, for individual subjects. Just over 5-6 years of running these workshops of Wits, and listening to people and the challenges that they had, reminds me more and more again how critical it is to get good writing skills. And ultimately, yes, you will almost be kind of on your knees, just getting over the finish line with this massive document and all this writing that you've done. And what I sort of really talk about in the course both of the courses that I'll make available to you today, is that the sooner you can get into a habit of reading, writing, and thinking, the sooner you can get into a routine which incorporates, high quality, generative and, edited sort of writing, the less suffering you're going to have to go through, because the time will come where your entire degree and all the expectations that is placed on you from family and friends, etc., it's all going to come down to how well you can write. So writing is I think without doubt just that critical thing that we've all got to work on in our own lives. Then just a quick note to say that in the different faculties, so these are the sort of big 5 major faculties that you'll find, at universities and in academia around the world, you will find a slightly different style or vocabulary or approach to writing in each of these faculties. And it almost even comes down to different referencing notation. You'll have a different referencing notation depending on which faculty you're in. And we've done webinars on referencing with EndNote and using other tools, etc. But just the conversations and the journals and conferences and your work as a student, whether undergrad or postgraduate in those different faculties, is going to look and feel very different depending on which faculty you're in. And the principles that I teach and we'll go through now in this webinar, and which I'll make available to you in the course, which you can go through in more detail, really are generic across all of these faculties. Within each of those faculties, the best way for you to build up familiarity is to read other people's work. Read your supervisor's final report or thesis. Read widely in the journals and the conferences of those faculties, and you will start to pick up, the writing style and approach that you need to be adopting if you're actively studying or researching in any of those faculties. Okay, but I think importantly, this is no excuse for unnecessarily complex writing, and this is one of the big things that I teach. And certainly those of us at the earlier stage of our academic journey, you might look at much more senior profs, potentially within these faculties, and that's a very dense, complex style of writing that they use. And really, you should not try and copy that. You should really, as I say, write as unambiguously and as clearly as possible. Write so that you can be understood by your reader, not so that you are required to explain a sentence or a paragraph or a page or a section in your document. And that really must surpass, the faculty specifics, that you might be aware of depending on which field of study you're working in. And this is the problem, guys. So a very famous quote from Mark Twain here: it actually takes longer to write with clarity. And that famous quote there of Mark Twain: I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead. It's relatively easy for us to ramble on and fill pages with poor quality writing. It's actually harder to ensure that writing is high quality and ultimately is actually going to be a little bit shorter. So be very clear about padding, a writing project unnecessarily, because that poor writing quality is going to be picked up and will affect, your progress. So the problem is, as I've got there on the screen, is that we are all writing about complex ideas. And any of those faculties that I showed you on the previous slide, the problems that we're trying to grapple with in each of those areas are complex. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And at a BSc, MSc, and PhD level, you're working towards the pinnacle of our collective understanding of those fields as a species on this planet. And as we do more and more research, we develop more and more knowledge and understanding of how the world works. And then we have to translate that for society so that they can understand it and make sense of it. But if we cannot understand those complex ideas and formulate ideas around those issues and problems that we're trying to solve in such a way that our writing can be consumed and used as part of the process of understanding more of those topics, we're not actually making a contribution. We're just contributing to our inability to understand those fields and our collective inability to solve those problems. So your job, and that's why I said earlier, you have to have a habit of reading, writing, and thinking, because that thinking is actually where the clarity of your writing must start. You need to be able to get clarity in your mind around the topics that you're dealing with. It is an iterative process. You will need to write and think and write and think and read at the same time. And I talk about that in my Student Success Masterclass. But the temptation is, and especially if we're rushed and we don't have time and we're late for our assignment and we're sitting up and we've missed the deadline, we tend to then densify our language because we create this false illusion that we are grappling with these complex topics. And so if our writing is complex, it must mean that we're also making progress in understanding those complex ideas ourselves. And actually the opposite is true. The clearer your writing and the more confident your academic voice is, the better you're able to grasp those ideas and make progress in your research and studying of those. So to avoid convoluted writing, and the tips and tricks that I'll give you today will be very practical that you can apply to get away from complex, convoluted writing, which hides our inability to think clearly. And it does take longer, as Mark Twain said there. It takes longer to write with clarity than it does to just fill the pages with words. All right, so let's start then. And guys, please, questions. So this is the first tip. And whenever I teach this, I just believe more and more strongly in how powerful a principle this is. Lead one, it says slides are blurry on your side. I don't know if anybody else is struggling, but do let me know, please. And I'm happy. What I will do is in the Student Success Coach Facebook group, I'll provide the screenshots of all of these as well as the slides so that you can get access to them from there. So we've got two sentences there. The first sentence, you can read it there. And then the second sentence, what I've underlined in both sentences is the subject, which is also the character of the sort of story that's unfolding here. But notice how the writer has changed the subject from the first sentence to the second sentence. And Barley, I'll come to a question just now about proofreading. In the first sentence, the subject is the character. It is, and we learned this at school, right? A noun, people, place, thing, right? And you need to go back to that principle even at an academic level. And I'll explain to you why. Because if you make your subject an abstract concept, like it is in sentence 2 there, where it says the reason for Locke's frequent repetition. Now, reasoning is an abstract concept. It's not a person, place, or thing. What happens is you have to clutter your sentence with additional words. So look at the subject there. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. Whereas in the first sentence, it's Locke. It's the name of the character. So make sure that your subjects are not abstract concepts. It's a very simple thing to do. And really, you need to be your own editor. You need to, be the person that puts red lines through your writing before somebody else does. I know I've had it. We've all had it. It's no fun. So Mercia says the slides are good on your side. That's fantastic. Okay, so just check internet connections there. And Nozipa, I'll put the Facebook page link on there just now. But please just dwell on this for a second. And one action that I want you to take going into the weekend and into your semester and the writing projects that you have for this year, if you get nothing else from this webinar, think about the subjects of your sentences. Are they the actor? Okay, and remember, it can be people, person, place, thing. Okay, is it as simple as that? Or have you tried to convey some level of complexity by making your subject an abstract concept? So, for example, the decision of the High Court in 1956 led to something or other. Just say, the High Court decided in 1956. So, again, this is our tendency to think more complicated in complicated ways and then write in more complicated ways because we're potentially dealing with complex ideas. And that's fine for a first draft. So as you do generative writing and as you just, get some words on the page, and I often say, if you don't know what to write, I don't know what to write. And as your thinking and your fingertips start going in sync, you'll be able to get more words on the page. But that first version of your generative writing is probably going to look a lot like sentence number 2. Then this tip says to you, go back and edit your writing to simplify your subjects of your sentences to be the clear doer, people, person, or thing. Okay. All right, then another one here. And again, I'm not going to read it, but you can see the subject in number 2 is an obscure action. Okay, it's still technically a subject because you can describe it and it is a thing, but it's more abstract than in the first sentence. So where in the first sentence you can see that the rainforests are the critical, clear and concise subject that the rest of the sentence then is linked to. But in the second sentence, the person writing this is trying to tell the story inside the subject. Okay. So don't try and do too much work of developing your argument in the subject. Strip down your subject back to people, person, thing, person, thing, place, right? That's what we learned at school, and that's what you need to be doing at varsity as well. There's absolutely no difference about it. However, there may be some instances where you cannot resolve it down and there is no clearer way of stating a subject, and that's absolutely fine. The problem comes in when people are writing like this throughout their entire thesis or writing project. And what happens is you will exhaust your reader and you will get a lot of red pen through your writing, because a reader is doing subconscious effort as they're reading your writing. So if you give them a lot of work to do by trying to understand complex subjects, they're not going to enjoy reading your writing. And again, we're not talking about the cat sat on the mat, that sort of elementary level of writing. You've got to make sure that you convey unambiguously the complexity of the topic that you're talking about, but that doesn't have to complicate the sentence itself. The sentence must be as brutally clear and simple as possible, as you can see there in the first sentence. Okay, I don't see any questions. Let me just quickly then give you that to read and grab the Student Success Coach Facebook group link and pop that into the chat for you. So Nozipo, there is the link. So Nozipo asked for the Facebook page link. And Nozipo, if you weren't with us at the beginning, just to say that we've got a fantastic community there. I think we've got about 2,300 students at all levels, helping each other, supporting each other. There are mentors in there, as I indicated just now. We even had somebody needing a monitor during the week. If you were in last week's webinar, I talked about how people have used the group as a bit of an accountability platform. So they burn their boats in the Facebook group and they'll come on in the morning and say, right, I'm committing to do this, this, and this today as part of my studies. And that accountability of telling the rest of the group what you're going to do then focuses your mind to prioritize on those tasks, because in the absence of that shared accountability, you'll find every reason to go watch Netflix and do a million other things and scroll social media, for example. So that's just another example of how powerful the Facebook group is. Okay, let's deal with Rama's question: how best way to reduce plagiarism when writing? So number one, and where this comes in, is obviously when we sort of use citations and we're reading other people's work and they seem to just have a brilliant grasp on the topic better than we could. And so the temptation is to just reuse that. So obviously, if you are found guilty of plagiarism, it can be catastrophic for your studies and you can be blacklisted, and it, can potentially be blocked even from other universities. You'd certainly be kicked out of the university that you are at. So a good question, because it is definitely something that you want to avoid. And it further reinforces what I was saying earlier, is that we want our students to have independent thinking, right? We need everyone on this webinar today to solve the problems that they're working on. I firmly believe that the problems of the world today require the rigor of the academic research process. But regurgitating other people's work just as a quick way of getting your degree, that's not making a contribution. That's going to add a black mark to your name. But what I think Rama is saying is that sometimes it could happen unintentionally. Okay, and what I was saying there was that when you cite other sources, obviously you must put quotation marks around that text. But if you are citing and rewording other people's writing, then you must do so sufficiently that it doesn't look like plagiarism, because the university will put your writing through a system like Turnitin, or there's a couple of others, and it will measure the degree that your writing is the same or similar to the rest of the writing that's available out there on the internet. So it uses very advanced AI and other algorithms to do that. So rule number one is put direct quotes into quotation marks, obviously, and then those are excluded from that system. When it sees the quotation marks, it doesn't judge that as plagiarism. But when you are incorporating or integrating someone else's writing into your own paragraph, you have to be very careful that you reword the sentence to add your own independent thinking and opinion on that writing. And Rama, the section of your thesis where this becomes the biggest issue is in your literature review, most of the time, because you're talking about other sources, you're quoting them, and you're building up some groundwork of your own literature review before you actually go into your own study. So I cover a little bit of this in the courses that I'll share today, but there's a lot more detail on it in my proposal online course, where I help you then actually develop a literature review and give you some pointers for how to incorporate other sources in the writing of your literature review. Okay. Cindy says, hi, Cindy, good to have you, a regular webinar viewer. One of the comments that I had about my literature review chapter is that it was more of a summary than a critical piece of writing. How can we avoid making it? Absolutely. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. We don't want a description of what is already there, okay, because people can go and read those sources. We want your critical assessment of those sources. We want you, and this is where academics is fantastic, because it gives you that space to critically engage with other writers and other sources. What I'll do is I'll dig out a couple of resources that will help you with this. There's a couple of very good blog articles that I can think of off the top of my head. Cindy, but to answer your question, the single biggest advice that I can give you is are you bringing in enough of your own criticism or critical thinking, shall we say, of other sources? And a very good way to do this, Cindy, is, and sometimes we get nervous of being critical from an academic perspective, and often a very good way of doing that is actually to compare two different sources. And when you compare two different sources that have two very different conclusions, they can't both be right. Yeah. So when you engage with sources and you find different conclusions on the same topic or from the same data set, for example, and those researchers disagree, the way that you critically engage and present what they've been talking about and how you link those two sources together in your literature review will start to ensure that you don't do this type of summarizing, because summarizing is just saying, source one says this, source two says this, source three says this, source four says this. But if you say source one disagrees with source three and source two is agreed with source four, you've already started to engage and compare those sources and apply some critical thinking to them. And then you could say, well, my hypothesis for my study, because you haven't done your study, you don't have any findings yet. You say, my hypothesis is that actually source 2 and 4, need further investigation or had gaps in their methodology, and which I'm then going to explore in my own study. Okay, so a little bit of thoughts there for you, Cindy. Right, let's keep going. Right, now let's talk about verbs. And again, it's relatively simple to understand, a little bit more difficult to apply. And let's go through a couple of examples. So again, our friend Locke, and in the first sentence, the verbs, the doing words of the sentence, right? Very important. So now if you've got a clear subject, that clear subject is going to do something in the sentence, right? That's what we learned, right, at school. But you've got a choice. You're either going to write down the doing words as a verb or as a noun. Okay, so when you write a verb or a doing word as a noun, it's called nominalization. And we'll go through a couple of examples of that. So look at the second sentence. The activity of the sentence, so the repeating activity, is actually written as a noun. It's written as repetition. Okay, repetition is a noun. Okay, but in the first sentence, repeated is the past tense verb of repeat. Again, distrust is the absence of the verb trust. Okay, naming is less of a verb than name. Okay, and again, it's just about simplifying your subjects, which was the first tip, and then making sure that your activity or doing words are actually verbs in your sentences. Okay, and Tokozo says, do you recommend using the plagiarism tools that are available on the internet, or should we try and rephrase? Okay, definitely. So you can get a login to plagiarism tools, absolutely. And I did that when I submitted my thesis. And you'll always get a level of unintended plagiarism, just simply because it's impossible to write completely originally. And the university will be looking for anything, it should be less than 4% of your writing, for example. And to cause, I'll tell you a quick story. When I submitted my thesis into Turnitin, before I actually submitted it to my supervisors, it gave me a whole report on my writing. And it said, there's a source that you seem to be potentially plagiarizing because your writing style is too similar to the source. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because I'd obviously been quite careful not to plagiarize. So it gives you a whole report. And I went down to the sources that it said I was too similar to, and it was my own website. So I blog on my website, peteralkema.com, and that's my writing as well. Okay, so the tool had picked up from the internet. I had not mentioned my website in my study. It had picked up writing from my own website and said it looks very similar to this thesis, but it wasn't clever enough to know that it was the same author. So I was quite amazed by how clever that piece of software was. So into course, so yes, you can get access to those tools, and then there's going to be no surprises, right? Because if you submit that in and you get the results of, let's say, less than 4%, they're going to submit it into the same tool. So you'll know in advance whether you're at risk, and it will show you in your writing where it thinks that you've got risks of plagiarism. So I would strongly recommend doing that. Yeah, and just I think for everybody's awareness, thanks, Nick, appreciate that. The practice of taking someone else's work ideas and passing them off as your own, and in a writing context, which is the topic we're discussing today, it's the writing, the sequence of very specific words that somebody else has put in a sentence or a paragraph or a writing project that you then just copy exactly as it is, and intentionally or unintentionally use that in your writing. And what I was saying earlier was you need to critically engage with that writing, change the word order and the words that are used enough such that it is not, plagiarizing the other person's work, but more importantly, is critically engaging with that person's work, because you don't want to be summarizing and just referencing other material without bringing your academic critical thinking into the argument as well. Right. Okay, I think, this is another example, our rainforest again. So if rainforests are stripped, okay, past tense verb to serve, right, verb, short term, etc., the earth bias verb may be damaged. Okay, so in the first sentence, those are clear verbs, right? In the second sentence, the activity of the sentence is actually captured in words that are nouns. So you don't have this sense of the activity. It's again abstracted one level away from you reading the story of this person's writing. And again, for a reader, an examiner, or a supervisor going through your writing, they're spending subconscious effort going through your writing. And if you're continually bombarding them with abstract subjects and nominalized activity through nouns instead of verbs in your sentence, you are draining them, and they're not going to enjoy your writing. What is the difference between professional and formal writing as a student? Which writing is suitable? Johannes, so we're talking academic writing. The principles here would apply regardless. I mean, I think any form of writing, you should always try and make your subjects as clear as possible and avoid nominalizing your verbs. As for the difference, maybe somebody else can add something into the chat in terms of your specific question there. But as a student, you're probably more doing formal academic writing. And I'll provide some resources for you to go and read up a little bit more about that after this webinar. Okay, so this is an example, some examples of nominalization. So, and again, this creeps into your writing often without you knowing it, okay? So you might put the word decision into your sentence, and the first time you write that sentence, it's perfectly fine. Or failure, or resistance, or precision, or frequency, or intelligence, okay? But, okay, so now when you see those words pop up in your sentences, like decision, see if you can reword that to decide. And what you will find is, on the right-hand side there, you'll actually not only change that word, but you'll also be able to reduce a number of other words from the rest of your sentence. Because what happens is, when you nominalize a verb, you tend to have to add articles and prepositions. So that's the first bullet point there. So you reduce the number of words in your sentence, which means you write clearer. So the less words a reader has to go through in a sentence, the quicker they're able to understand what that sentence is about, right? And then secondly, the verbs are just more specific and linked to the clear subject or the character that we spoke about previously. Okay, last couple of ideas. This one is also very, very powerful and useful. And the idea is that you should always write in a way that adheres to this principle of old before new. So in the first two sentences there at the top, there's some sort of concept at the beginning, a subject possibly, and then something, 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 and then an object potentially at the end of the sentence. Now, what the author in A has done is to start the next sentence with something which is unrelated to either the subject or the object of the first sentence. And then they link it back to the object of the first sentence, right? And you'll find this in your writing, you know, you're building on concepts, you know, you're building up, you're starting from a shared understanding of something. And that's why you've got an introduction in your thesis. You start with a shared understanding that's coming from the contemporary world, and then you go through a process that gets more and more complex and builds an argument towards your findings and conclusions and application. And that actually happens at a sentence level. And the tendency is for all of us in academia to bombard the reader with new concepts. And that's fantastic because you're passionate about a subject, you're well written about it, you're well researched about it, and you're keen to get that knowledge across to the reader. The problem is, again, you are exhausting your reader. And if you think about the subconscious effort that they have to spend, by the middle of the second sentence in A, they have to remember three things. Okay? But by the middle of the second sentence in B, they only have to remember two things. And you're giving them more time before you introduce that red topic, whatever it is the third idea or concept in that piece of writing. Okay, so try and use that principle, and again, do it as your own editor, not in the first draft. When you're doing your first draft and you're just generating writing, just get the writing out there. These principles should be applied as you improve and edit your writing. And I want you almost just to have a little sticky on the side, you know, simple subjects, doing verbs, old before new. And then the next one is complexity last. So again, similar to previously, but the newest, most complex information must go last. Again, the principle that you're building up and you're giving your reader time to understand what you've already told them before you keep telling them new concepts. Now, as we've said, in those faculties and in all our studies, you have technical terms. There's complex ideas, complex units of information, ways in which we measure things, etc. And you can improve your writing and improve how your reader responds to your writing by just moving things around in your sentences. And again, the temptation is that we start sentences with these complex ideas because we want to get it down on paper. We want our reader to see how clever we are. But you'll actually be more successful as a writer if you rather build up to those complex terms and put them towards the end of your sentences. Okay. So there's a couple of extra bullet points there for you to read and have a look at. Tapelo says, how can one write more faster if one is slow writer by nature? It is practice and it is confidence. And yes, there is a measure of the number of words. I did mention earlier that those must be high quality words as well. And Tapelo, the sort of hard thing to get to terms with is that you might write 500 words if you sit down and you've had a good 2-hour session of writing. But actually, once you've cut out words and you've simplified sentences and you've written a lot more clearer, that's going to end up being, let's say, 200 words. Okay. So all that work that you did of writing 500 words, once you've edited it and written it more clearly and concisely using the techniques that I've shared with you today, you're going to end up with less volume of words, but with a higher quality of writing. So, unfortunately, you then need to write even faster to get the 500 words done so that you've got the time to come back and edit to reduce those words back down to what should be the number of words that you end up with that is at the sort of expected level of quality. And again, and in actual fact, one of my YouTube videos, I talk about the exact number of words that I had in my proposal, my literature review, the sections of my thesis. And, one can use those as a bit of a benchmark. And it's a good guide, certainly from a master's to a PhD. The size of the final report or the length or the number of words, etc., is an indication of the breadth of the study that you've done. But, again, balance that with the quality of it. So don't think, Tapelo, that you just have to write fast to get a lot of words on the page. You have to write, fast from a generative perspective, and then pause to apply the principles and techniques like I've shown you today that will improve your writing. I see Tracy's watching today. How's it, Tracy? Hope you're well. Tracy says, I love seeing how these Friday lunchtime webinars have such a following and how everybody is asking questions and actively engaged. Peter, I said, offered what you do for our students is a gift. Absolute pleasure. And I think, Tracy, we're interviewing you next week. So let's see, and maybe let's think of a topic now that we're going to talk about next week. I don't know if CVs or interviews or graduate recruitment programs. I don't know if people are looking for internships or part-time work potentially during the year. Tracy is a fantastic person to help you with that. So Tracy, we will certainly see you here next week. All right, let's start wrapping up. And again, these are just a couple of ideas that we have touched on throughout the webinar. So sentence length, you again don't want long sentences because a reader has to subconsciously keep all those concepts in their mind before they finish the sentence. It's only when you finish a sentence that you can understand everything. So typically 1.5 lines potentially for a sentence length is probably about right. Choice of words is important. So there's a great style guide there that you can go and have a look at. Of course, grammar, spelling, punctuation, conventions, etc., also very important. Right, so a little bit of humor there, blood, sweat, tears, and coffee. It is exactly that. It is a hard grind. But also remember that there are fun aspects to that. And if you know that you're going through that with other people, then it makes it a lot easier. And of course, I have shared a lot of our resources today for you to come and join our group and check out the website and get the encouragement and the support that you need. And we even have a podcast. You can listen to some interviews with students who I interview a lady who was rocking her 6-month-old baby while writing her thesis at 1 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous. So it's amazing what other people are able to overcome and yet triumph and achieve, those degrees and those goals, that are also worthwhile. And what we also then do in the group is we have the graduation gowns shared as pictures and so on. So there's a lot of celebration and support for each other as you go through the process. All right, so let's then talk about the first course that I'm going to make available for you. This is then Double Your Academic Writing Quality Tips to Get Finished. And I'm going to make that available for you right now in the chat. And I have had to start limiting my free coupons for my courses. Otherwise, it starts to get a bit out of hand. So you need to grab that pretty quickly, as it will run out, but it will be enough for everybody on this webinar. As soon as you've enrolled, you've got access to that course for lifetime. It's not going to go away. It's just that the free access doesn't last forever. So it will literally be now and probably for a couple of hours after the webinar. So you can see there's some other thoughts from other students that have done that course. And really in this course, and we'll go through the curriculum now, I go through a lot more detail on some of the principles that I've shared with you this afternoon. So there I talk about writing early or too late, the golden thread, principles of drafting a research report, and abstract patterns are very important. So that abstract that you have to write up at the top, that's also very important. And then you can see there the importance and technique of ensuring that actions or verbs are not nominalized. So you can go through that again. It's the same as what I've been teaching this afternoon, but you'll have that video then as part of that course for reference going forward. A couple of practices and opportunities there to engage. Now, then this is a fantastic course, especially for people at the beginning of the academic year. And I don't know if Happiness was able to join us, but she got in touch with me this morning and I said, well, join the webinar because this course really sets out the big areas that you need to focus on. And no surprise, writing is one of them, because writing, as I said, is critical. And you can see that as step one at the bottom there. So step one, as I've mentioned, develop a habit of reading, thinking, and writing. And there are sections and lessons for each of these in this course. Then point number two is to set up your weekly supervisor stage report. Now, that's just a technique that I teach in this course and a couple of other courses that helps you drive a level of quality, and particularly at a postgraduate level. And that's why I said Happiness, starting her postgraduate studies this year, would find this incredibly useful. And it's based on this Kanban principle of regular cadence, regularly updating your tasks, and just getting into a weekly rhythm. And I provide you with my own status report. I provide you with exactly how I did it. And my weekly supervisor status report, together with the other principles that I teach in this course, is what got me through my PhD. So, I mean, I've been there, I've gone through it, I've experienced the blood, the sweat, and the tears, and these principles are equally applicable at the master's and the undergraduate level as well. And then step number three there, you must learn how to plan and master your tasks from to do to done. So like we said earlier, you can come into the Facebook group and you can have that shared accountability. That'll focus your mind on those 2 or 3 tasks that you need to complete. But how do you actually manage and visualize the completion of those tasks? And I teach you, very basic Kanban principles. And again, in our Facebook group, and if you were on the webinar last week, you'll have seen pictures of people that share their Kanban boards and how they've used Kanban boards to get through their tasks, to complete their study modules. It really brings it to life. And I teach you those principles and I share those examples for you in the course as well. And then the beginning of the year, but throughout the year, people start postgraduate studies at different times. There will always be the need for a good proposal, especially if you're going to a research module. And that could be, for an MBA, it could be for a postgraduate diploma, it could be for a master's, it could be for a full PhD. The principles of writing a good proposal, like we said earlier when we were talking about literature review, demonstrates and gives you an opportunity to practice and improve the way in which you critically engage with existing resources in that field that you want to study. And it sets out a plan and a process and a methodology that you're going to follow for doing your actual study. And then point number 5 there, writing practices. So once you get into, the various writing projects that you'll be required to do, a lot of what we've talked about this afternoon. And then the final step really is, getting your final report, thesis, or dissertation done at the top there. And of course, that's not everything, but, I think that's 80%. If you get those 6 habits right and you do those well and you repeat them as you go through your studies, you are going to be more successful than not. And this is just exposing the first step. And if you are at your earliest stage of your degree, like Happiness was, who spoke to me this morning, that habit of reading, writing, and thinking. So I think, Tapela, you asked earlier as well how to improve your writing. There's some tips here for you. to write early, often, and well, for example. To think about how your writing brings your thinking and your reading together. So you always need to be reading, writing, and thinking at the same time. But I will say, very importantly, the only measure of your reading and your thinking is your writing. You cannot get to the end of your degree and say, well, I did a lot of reading and thinking, and I've solved all these problems in my head. It's got to be on paper. It's got to be in clear, well-written reports about your research. Okay, so this is the course, Student Success Masterclass, 6 Steps to Complete Your Degree. I've had such wonderful feedback. As I've gone through my own PhD, I packaged what I wish I had when I was doing my PhD. I literally packaged that and said, if I was doing my PhD again, what would I wish I had access to in terms of these kinds of resources, this kind of teaching, to help me be more successful and confident in my writing and in my overall study. So Chanel says there, this course was phenomenal. Content was high quality and practical. A lot of value in the time I spent working through it. And again, it's this confidence. I feel more confident and excited about my academic journey. Thank you for this wonderful experience. I recommend this course to every student. So thanks, Chanel. Go through it. And again, you always have access to any of my courses once you've enrolled in them. So it's not like you have to do them all in one sitting or within a certain period of time. You will have access to those resources, those videos, those worksheets, etc., for you then to go back in if you need, a refresher as you're going through your studies. Okay, so I put the links there in the chat, and just in case you did miss out on them, that is the Student Success Masterclass, and then here is the writing course for you to enroll and get access to. And once you are in that course, you'll always have access to them. And please leave a rating and a review on my courses. Thank you very much. So just as a reminder, you will be prompted to leave a rating and a review as you go through any of my courses. Please do so whether you're watching any of my videos on the YouTube channel or interacting with any of my blogs or my content. I desperately need that feedback to see where I could improve and to see if it's useful for people. And that social proof helps other students like you to look at these courses, to look at these resources and everything that we create for the community, and then assess whether it's going to be helpful for them. Because it's no good me telling people stuff is useful. If I can show you what other people have said about these resources, that's an independent assessment of the value that you then potentially could also get from them. So, Riabetsu, absolute pleasure. Very good to have you guys join us every Friday. We are always here. And I think, most importantly for me is just to get onto the Facebook group. And that's where, I'll put all the resources again. And obviously, I have to approve everybody that comes in because I do moderate the group. So we just keep it nice and respectful and kind and helpful. But generally, we've had a very, very positive experience of that group since we set it up. And people like Tracy and others, Natasha, etc., are also very supportive and engaging in the group. And Tracy, we're looking forward to some of your tips in the Facebook group. So Tracy's got lots of advice to give you, especially from a graduate recruitment perspective, because remember, it's not, you get your degree, that's fantastic, but you need to go on and get a job and contribute to society. And that's where Tracy plays a fantastic role to come in and support us in the group from that perspective as well. Okay, I think we've gotten through everything that I wanted to. Just a reminder, it is hard work. Big projects like a master's or a PhD are not quick things, and they're not easy. You've taken on a big initiative. You've got expectations from people around you. You've got expectations of yourself. There's going to be pressure. There's going to be late nights. There's going to be hard work. But the only way to move forward and to make progress and to have success is to take action. And action really does change things. I always say a PhD is it's a series of tasks. It's a series of doing the right things in the right way over a sustained period of time. And just like I teach in the course, any one of those little tasks are important on their own, because those tasks themselves are not the PhD, but adding all of those tasks together are the PhD. And the techniques that I teach you in the Student Success Masterclass is then to combine, that daily discipline and that management of those tasks into the overall success that you're looking for with your degree, etc. Then just to mention mentorship that is in the group, and we're constantly looking for people to sign up as mentors in the group. So I think we've got 8 possibly in the group already. And there are people that, actively need mentors. And again, this is not your supervisor. No one's assessing you. This is just a weekly check-in or less frequently for however long or little it is that you want to, connect with each other. It's just an encouragement. It's just a support. It's just a weekly WhatsApp even. It's just a 10-minute phone call. I'm also available. The best way to reach me is in the Facebook group, and I'm happy to chat for 10, 15 minutes and point you in the right direction. But the most valuable thing that you can get as you go through your studies is mentorship and encouragement. It doesn't always have to be somebody in your faculty or in your immediate field. You can help people across faculties if you're at the same university or not. Also doesn't matter. Technology, means you can connect very easily. Just find someone that works for you, and you'll leverage them extensively. And they've made their time available through the Student Success Facebook group, and I would really urge that you take advantage of that. So really nothing left for you to do other than take action and just keep taking action. So enroll in the courses, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get into the Facebook group, find a mentor, and then apply that discipline of taking action in the rest of your degree. Koketso, no, it's a great question. There's no requirements needed to become a mentor. In the Facebook group, you'll see a little mentorship tab, and you can click that button, and then it'll either say, are you looking for a mentor, or would you like to become a mentor? And it's literally 2 clicks, and then you are added to our list of mentors. And we desperately, as a country, as a nation, we need people that are willing to help people also rise and lift them up so that they can have the same access to resources and information that those of us that are perhaps further on in our journey also had. And as much as we relied on mentors for us to have the success that we've got, so too people at the earlier stages of their journey also need mentors to be successful. So Koketso, if I see you later in the Facebook group, I'll just nudge you and remind you, if you are willing to be a mentor, we'd love to have you as a mentor and make a contribution into the group. All right, so thank you very much for everybody joining us today. I think the last thing is just to remind you that where you are right now is the Student Success Coach YouTube channel, and the recording of this webinar will always be available at the same link through which you arrived here now. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get that. I'll add it into the Facebook group as well. But I'd love you to subscribe as well, because then you'll get the benefit of all the videos that I post there throughout the week as well. Yeah, Nazipa, absolute pleasure. It's my contribution to your success, and I hope you find value in the courses and the material that we provide. As always, please do leave ratings, reviews, likes, comments, feedback. I desperately do need that to make sure that I'm doing the right thing and helping you guys as much as possible. So with that said, we will see you in the courses and in the Facebook group, and hopefully next week as well. So take action, everybody. See you and have a